So, on a quick pit stop in Bratislava in Slovakia, I actually found something really exciting, a grape variety that I knew about beforehand, but I actually never have tried it as a still dry wine and was actually quite convinced that most winemakers just use it as a blending partner today. The grape variety is called Hibernal. And yeah, it's super interestingly, I first actually encountered that variety in Denmark, where there's a producer called Rheingau, one of the Scandinavian Danish flagship producers. And they're actually using Hibernal as a sparkling wine. I will link the wine in the show notes so you can have a look at, a Danish sparkling wine. But now to the real stuff. It's kind of interesting because in the Wine Grapes Encyclopedia, the reference to Hibernal states, granted the book is from 2010, that this German hybrid variety actually has big success in Czech Republic. So no wonder that also in Slovakia, when I talk to winemakers here, most of them confirm, yes, the hybrids are in general very, very interesting for Slovakian winemakers, but Hibernal especially found a little bit like a place here among the Slovakian winemakers. Similar story to like another PIWI variety, the Johanniter, that also has been crossed in Germany, but never really was like taken seriously by German winemakers, and instead, for example, found a big like followership among Polish winemakers. So the winemaker I got this from, the Ráchela Winery, super small producer. The website is under construction. We met them on a local like Saturday market here in Bratislava that I'm linking in the show notes. Really beautiful market. Craft produce there, kombucha producers, some small wineries presenting themselves, some cheese, some fresh vegetables, flowers. So really this type of like Saturday style indoor market that you would like to visit and taste some local specialties and just have like some great atmosphere. And tasted the Hibernal there. 2024 is a dry one. The 2025 that he had was like in a semi-sweet style or like an off-dry style. So that definitely was not suitable for the tasting. I took the 2024, the dry version. But first, maybe a little bit more about the Hibernal variety. Hibernal is a so-called PIWI variety, and some call it also for hybrids. PIWI is a little bit difficult terminology. Quickly explained, it's a short form for pilzwiderstandsfähig, a German term that best translates to English with fungi resistant. And what are those hybrids all about? Those hybrids are crossings, like human-made crossings. In terms of Hibernal, it is a cross from 1944, where it has been crossed at the Geisenheim Research Institute, the University of Geisenheim in the Rheingau, Germany's like leading wine university. And here I used Riesling on the one side and Seibel 7053, never heard of that, a grape variety that has no commercial importance. And the idea with PIWI, the so-called hybrid varieties, is that we take on the one hand rather classic varieties, for example the Riesling in the case of Hibernal, which is Vitis vinifera varieties, the so-called European grape varieties, and we cross it, for example, with American varieties, the Vitis labrusca varieties, or for example Asian varieties, the so-called Vitis amurensis varieties. In this case, Seibel 7053 has some clear genetic heritage to Vitis labrusca, the American varieties, and this is usually done to increase a grape's disease resistance. Because most of the diseases we are fighting today in European vineyards, especially the powdery and the downy mildew, are actually American diseases that have been imported like more than 100 years ago when globalization slowly took fart and trade between Europe and the Americas has increased. Naturally very interesting from a sustainability perspective, because what PIWIs usually bring along is that the winemaker needs less interventions in the vineyard because they have these higher disease resistance against these classic diseases that we are fighting with. Good comparison is rule of thumb with a classic Riesling. The winemaker, even if they work organic or as sustainable as possible, they have to go out, let's say, still 10 to 14 times a year to do like plant protection, especially against the mildews. But if a PIWI, for example, we can reduce those interventions to maybe 2 to 4 times a year. So this saves labor costs, less intervention, less tractor work in the vineyard, better for the soil. And also, like as a side effect, some winemakers tell me they're using PIWIs today on, let's say, the wine sites that are most difficult to access, for example, with a tractor, because then this also like makes it easier for everybody involved in the vineyard, and also like from a work safety perspective, much safer to work, for example, in steep slopes or vineyards that are difficult to access with a tractor. But let's have a look. I'm tasting a lot of wines today, so I'm using the Cora wine actually. For once, and not opening the bottle. So if you don't know this tool, it's super smart if you have a lot of bottles at home and don't want to open them like all the time. So let's see what comes in the glass here. It's a little bit cloudy what's coming out here, actually. Interesting. Didn't expect it like this. Looked totally clear when I got it actually like at the market. So maybe a little bit of bottle variation. Look the winery up on Facebook. I linked the Facebook page that they're having. Actually, again, not much information about them, but you can definitely see on the Facebook pictures that, yeah, there are plenty of flowers between the rows, so they must work like organic on some way, like very sustainable, having a lot of like flowers and blossoming around. So wouldn't surprise me if the wine is unfiltered actually, which it looks like a little bit. So yeah, some yellow greenish reflections here. The wine is at 13.5% alcohol. We are in the southwest of Slovakia, so in the border region to Hungary and Austria, quite close to Bratislava and Vienna. And this is also like one of the areas where Slovakian winemaking really is concentrated and where we find also many of the top producers. In case you haven't dealt much with Slovakian wines, it's really like a recommendation. Go to Bratislava, and from there it's very, very short distance with a rental car, for example, to visit like some of the wineries around. So let's see how this actually comes along in the nose. It's fresh and lively and floral. I definitely see the Riesling connotation here because it cries immediately in the nose that this is acidic, that is fresh, like citrus perspective, very clearly. Lots of green apple, like green pear, really fresh and vibrant in that regard. Yeah, calling for summer wine, but at the same time, we also can feel the 13.5% alcohol, because I want to say it's compared to maybe like a classic Mosel Riesling, not so much on the fresh side. It's more like ripe and mature fruit. Here's some peach, also some hints of peach and apricot. So we definitely can feel that this comes from a moderate climate, that it's got some good sun, 2024, also like a quite warm vintage also in Slovakia. And then, yeah, I mean, unfiltered, definitely there is some lees contact. I can feel this here in the nose. It's like a little bit creamy, substantial in that side. Also got definitely some malolactic conversion. So there is some, yeah, Parmesan cheese connotations and some creaminess, some backbone in here, which makes it actually like quite round. And then something that is like quite typical for many of the PIWI varieties, but also like for Hibernal especially. It reminds a little bit of green bell pepper in that regard. So this kind of like greenishness that we sometimes get in Sauvignon Blanc, the grassiness, but always in a very creamy way. So a little bit of vegetal hints, a little bit of unripe and greenish hints here, like underlying. Yeah, super interesting, appealing in the nose actually. For a wine that did cost like 10 euro per bottle on the local market, actually quite some complexity coming out here and totally clean winemaker's work. On the palate, quite appealing, spicy actually in a certain way, a bit herbal, the acidity is coming out really nicely. Again, for 13.5% alcohol and some body and some structure and some backbone. It is fresh, it's lively, really convincing here, well balanced, a little bit of creaminess supports it. Wine I would preferably sip by itself. You can also like sink it to some nice salads or just some tapas plate or just like accompanying some antipasti or something like this, definitely. Stays actually in the mouth for quite a while, so like good medium plus finish here. Really, really lovely, really surprising for something, yeah, that you just like find sometimes on a local market, which is a fun thing about the more like underdeveloped wine growing regions, that you to the left and to the right find suddenly some wines from winemakers nobody ever has heard about, and you actually, wow, this is quite value for money everyday wine you can drink here. So this was like a little introduction to the Hibernal variety. I'm interested if you ever encountered this variety, please leave a comment and make maybe some recommendations, like also like to the others here who watched the video, what Hibernal wines should be tried. I definitely link the wine also from Rheingau, from the Danish producer I mentioned in the beginning in the show notes. And also, you obviously have watched the video to this point, so please subscribe and give the video a like. Thank you so much, appreciated, and see you out there for tasting 1368 grape varieties. Cheers!